So we're still in the middle, toward the end of the Mishnah of the many sayings that Hillel has said, and we're going to continue into another Mishnah with more sayings. Unless somebody has anything to add to the conversation we had last time, I'm ready to move to the next one, which is the very last clause in that Mishnah. Most of us have it as Mishnah 5. Some of us have it as Mishnah 4. The Hebrew is Al Tomar Lichshe Efne or Lichshe Epaneh Eshne Shema Lo Tipaneh. And the translation is, who's going to give us the translation that most of us have pretty much? Yeah, Geraldine.
Okay, this is, let's see, the 5th one down.
Yeah.
Is it do not say when I have leisure?
That's the one.
Okay. Do not say when I have leisure, I will study, for you may never have leisure.
Right. A pretty daunting
It's true.
statement. Anybody have any tweaks on that?
I'm sorry, what chapter is this?
Chapter 2, Pirkei Avot, chapter 2. And it's the first Mishnah that labels itself as being the Mishnah that Hillel would say.
Okay.
Okay, so most of us have it as Mishnah 5, but some people have it as Mishnah 4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last one is, do not say, I'll learn when I have time, because maybe you'll never have time. And our Rabbi Shapiro translation that we always look at as an extra thing, here I remember it's not much different.
Not much, except he uses the word free instead of leisure. When I am free, I will study, for perhaps you will never be free. But he explains in a note that it's really about time. Don't hope to find time to study, because time is never found, only made. So he seems to be, right along with the standard.
Yeah, the Hebrew word is epaneh or efneh, and it comes from the word panui, and which is also related to the word panim. Panim is face, but panui is available. So, in other words, there's nothing, if I look out, I don't see anything obstructing my vision. I don't see anything that is in my way, or everybody else can see me. So when I'll get free from all of my chores and obligations and so on, when my schedule frees up a little bit, then I'll make some time to study, because you may never be able to get there. You may never become free and available and have that leisure time. That's the gist of the statement. So some people nodded their heads. Any expansion on this? Yeah, Josie.
Yes, you always hear people say, and I'm retired, so I don't have that problem anymore. I have to go to work. I can't go to services. I can't do this. I can't do that. So in this culture, your daily job supersedes everything. Was that true in other societies too? In other times for us?
Well, yeah, I don't know. If there are any other anthropologists or historical sociologists can chime in here. I think that the notion of leisure time is a modern notion that developed after the Industrial Revolution. Long ago, people's work and people's lives were very, very integrated. And if you were working, again, as a farmer or something, you got up at the crack of dawn or even earlier, you worked your butt off, you came home, you were exhausted, maybe you had something to eat, and then you fell asleep. And that was your life.
Yeah.
It was when work became compartmentalized because of the factory system and because of taking people off the land and giving them separate kinds of jobs. And of course, everything I'm saying is a simplification and a big gross exaggeration, but nevertheless, there's a strong, I think, piece of truth to it. Then you started having, there was always the leisure class. right? The leisure class were the people who didn't have to work for a living, the people who didn't have to, punch that factory clock, or didn't have to, mend shoes or do piecework, and bring work home to get that extra, penny for the shirt collar that they had to do, and stuff like that. So the leisure class were the people who were free, who actually were, free and clear of doing, they could decide when they were going to go hunting, and when they were going to have their tea party, and and when they were going to have the ball, and all that kind of stuff. It was a very rigorous schedule. But that's also part of what we need to understand. Some people, you mentioned retirement, but some people, when they retire, they also say, I can't get a handle on I'm so busy. I'm more busy now than I ever was. In the traditional commentators, so there's one of the great commentators on Avot, is Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah was an ethicist who lived in the 13th century. And he says, don't think, okay, tomorrow you'll have more time. He says, every day brings new things, right? So this is not a 21st century concept, that, oh my God, I can't keep up with all the new things that are going on. He says, every day, tomorrow's going to be, the world is full of these new things. You're always going to have something new that you're going to have to take care of. So, so you can't, bank on, okay, my whole schedule is going to open up on Tuesday. It's, in shul contexts, and in all organizations that have volunteer, that depend on, like we were just talking about before we started recording, volunteers actually doing such meaningful work. People always notice it's the busiest people that have the time to volunteer, right? It's the people that are doing 1,000 things that they have to do, and somehow or other they find the time to do, the project for the organization, for the shul, and etc. Because there's a certain paradox here, right? What Hillel is saying is, don't say when your time frees up, that's when you learn, because you may not have any time that will free up. Well, okay, let's take that literally. So if the time doesn't free up, so when are you supposed to study? The answer is, it's not going to free up by itself. By itself, there will always be, work abhors a vacuum. There'll always be things that will have to be taken care of, that you'll have to answer the call. So it's in the Hebrew, in the passive. The Hebrew is in the passive. When I will be freed up, when it will turn out that I will have some free time, so then I will study, active. So then Hillel says, because you know what? It may never happen that you will then become available one day. You're going to have to make yourself available. Every single person that I'm looking at on my screen, you're making yourselves available for this. You have decided that at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, when you could be sleeping in, when you could be just sitting and having a leisurely piece of French toast or something like that, read the paper, you decided, no, I'm going to tune in and study some Torah. So it's not going to happen passively. It has to happen by reaching out and making it your priority. That's what he's saying. Yeah, Merle.
I think, and it's sometimes harsh on yourself to think this, but I think if you want to do something, you will find the time. And if you don't really want to, or you're really not committed, or it's not as important, you won't find the time. And it might be hard for us to admit that to ourselves, but I think if you want to find the time, you'll find the time.
Yeah, so I think that it is a little harsh. Personally, I struggle with that myself. There are things that I tell myself I think I want to do, and then I don't find the time to do them. So how much do I want to beat up myself? I don't have that much time. I don't have time to beat myself up, although everybody has, time to do that, if that's what they're inclined to do. But what it brings up is, it is a kind of, in the end, a mindset about what can I work on finding some, how do I, it's complicated. It's not, well, if I want to, I'll find the time, because there will be juggling that'll have to happen. There will be, prioritizing, there will be conflicting demands that you're going to have to measure. And then, when you say, if you really want it, what if you have many things that you want? That's one of the, back to, to the idea of modern times, we as human beings who live in a much more abundant society, life, world, than a lot of other people even today, but we in the United States, in Montclair and environs, so we have so much, and we have the opportunity to actually tap into finding out what we want. What we want is itself is a leisure commodity. How many people, our parents' generation, how much time did they have to do what they wanted? My parents grew up in the Depression. They may have wanted to do a whole ton of things, but you know what? They had to work for that extra nickel. They had to put my mother, had a bunch of siblings. She and parents who were immigrants who didn't know the language and who were destitute. She didn't go to college. She had to drop out of college because she had to put her sisters and brother, she had to raise them. So she may have wanted to go to learn, but she wanted to do other things also. And then one thing had to take priority over the other. So the idea that we have multiple wants and that we can satisfy all of the things that we can get whatever we want is also a very modern idea. Yeah, Serena.
So actually, that was part of what I was going to say, is that in some sense it's privilege. I mean, we have become aware of our own privileges, and it's a privilege to be able to say, I can carve out this amount of time, to work on that or to focus on something else. So that was one thing I wanted to say, and I think that I was, the first thing that came to my mind was my father, who he grew up in the Depression, really, really poor. And we were poor for a long time, I remember. And he worked a lot. He was a veterinarian. He had his own business. He just worked really round the clock, and didn't, even when we were more comfortable, I don't think that he would have thought that with 4 children and all these obligations, I don't think that he would have thought that he could take the time off from work less, and then pursue some other things. And when he retired, he joined a study session once or twice a week with actually a quite Orthodox rabbi who he argued with all the time. He became involved in politics, the Democratic Party. He revived it in Ocean County. He started working, he joined the boards and was asked to join the boards of a mental health organization, all kinds of stuff. It was just amazing. It's like the second chapter in his life. And luckily he lived for a long time able to do that. Of course, one of the tragedies it would be if you come to the point where you retire. Lou has this a lot in his practice. Some of the people that he sees as patients who retire and then die shortly after, they don't get that second chapter. So I think about with my own brother-in-law who died when he was 70. You don't get the time. So I just this one sentence, just there's so many things to think about here. Yeah.
So it's getting the time, and like I was saying, seizing the time, and what you're saying, so many people that when they retire, the ground falls out from under them because everything that they have oriented themselves around disappears, because their work was their life. It gave them structure, it gave them meaning. So then they get the time, but they don't get, I'm not talking about people that tragically are ill or somehow there's some terrible catastrophe happens to them, but sometimes the time becomes this gigantic. The word panui is there's a phrase in Hebrew, chalala panui, the empty void. And the void, instead of leisure time, it becomes a void, and it becomes something that's very, very scary. But that's, so what Hillel is saying is that you can't wait for that to happen and then hope that that'll be the time that'll make up for all the stuff that you didn't have time for, right? Somehow or other, you've got to make it happen even before, the clouds open up and the sun starts shining for you. So I want to just, it occurs to me that part of that then, it's about strategies also, right? It's about, if this is a priority, if this is something that you then take seriously and say, you know what, I can't wait until I'm going to just be able to sit down and have a comfortable cup of coffee while I open up, my book or listen to my podcast or whatever it is. What are the elements that need to be developed in as a strategy to grab some time? If you can't, if you can't have the 2 hours to sit and study, you don't have it. What do I have? Do I have a minute? Do I have 5 minutes? Do I have 15 minutes? Where? Is this what I do instead of reading the Times in the morning when I have my cup of coffee or something like that? So developing the tools to do this in any kind of limited way would then also be important. So what I want to show you is stuff. Here's this little book, right? It's a little book. It goes Zohar HaKadosh HaMechulak. So this is the Holy Zohar, and this is published in sections. So the Zohar is like, here's a book of the Zohar. This is 1/3 of the Zohar, right? So this is specifically made so that a person can put it in their pocket, and when they're waiting in the doctor's office, or when they're on the bus, or when they're on their coffee break or lunch break, they can pull this out of their pocket, and it's got 50 pages of Zohar, and then you take the next one, and then you take the next one, and there's as you go through it. This is a pocket volume of Mishnah. Pirkei Avot is in here. You can get I have one over there, a pocket Pirkei Avot, right? So this whole pocket, here's a pocket book of Psalms, right? And this is actually pretty nice because it actually has a translation in Hebrew of the Hebrew words of the Psalms. So I happen to like this edition. But so there's a whole industry actually that it's clearly, as we I don't think anybody would be shocked to know, this is based on the Orthodox world. It's not it's not seeing most of its sales going into the non-Orthodox world, but it's because the Orthodox world has this value of grab a minute to study something, learn one law a day, something like that. So being strategic is the practical part of the value commitment, right? So you find the ways to do it. Try to find the ways to do it. Any other comments? All
Just
right.
noting, there's a note in our version that says that this is an application of Hillel's rule, if not now, when. So it relates back to that as well.
Okay. The guy was consistent. Right. Very good. All right. So we have a few more minutes so we can start the next Mishnah. In my edition, it's the following Mishnah. Hu haya homer. He would say, he used to say, Okay, Mishnah 6 in my edition. Good.
Mhm.
All right, Geraldine, you're up for the official version.
Okay. A boor cannot be reverent.
Okay, what's the Hebrew word for boor? Does anybody know?
Boor.
Boor, right. So I don't know how that worked out, but there it is. And maybe it comes from Greek or something. Okay, so a boor cannot be reverent. That's your translation. Anybody else before we get to the Shapiro version?
Yes, we have an empty-headed man cannot be a sin-fearing man.
Okay. And anybody else want to put in something that they think might shed some light on this?
My translation says an ignorant person.
An ignorant person, what?
Oh, an ignorant person cannot be fearful of sin.
Okay. And so that's already, giving us various terms that are not exactly identical. Interesting. Okay. And so Bill, you had your chance before. Josie, you have the Shapiro translation?
Well says, the fearlessness of a fool is empty. The piety of a
Oh, no,
fool
that's it. That's all. That's all. That's all. That's all.
is a
That's
lot.
all. There's
So
more.
if you're brave and you do.
Okay, no, we don't want anything else. That's all we want. We just want that. Although, I mean, what you're bringing up is that in this string of sayings, it's like again and again and again. In the Hebrew, it reads like this. Ein bur yirei chet, velo ama aretz chasid, velo habayshan lomed, velo hakabdan milamed, velo kol amarbe b'schora machkim. Right, so, and then we get a conclusio. So it's no, it's not like this is not everybody that's this way is this way. Not everything that's that way is that way. Not every person that's that way is this way. So this is again and again various statements, and they do build on each other somewhat. We can read one more. Actually, you know what? What the heck? Geraldine, read the first two, the boor, and then the next one.
A boor cannot be reverent. An ignoramus cannot be pious.
Okay. And all right, any other variations on that we want to go? Merle, you've got your new fresh edition of Pirkei Avot. What do you got there? But you're on mute.
For the second phrase, it says an unlearned person cannot be scrupulously pious.
Okay. And now the Shapiro.
The piety of a boor is hollow. Sorry.
It's the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in both cases, he flips it around, right? So, okay. Now, our commentary. Who'd like to offer commentary for this?
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I've always thought when I've looked at history that there's not much difference between the courageous, bold person and the idiot who just rushes in to do something. They're very close together. But yet we have heroes and we shake our heads and say, why did so-and-so risk everything, on a dare?
Right. Most of the time depends whether they succeed, right? If they succeed, they're heroes. If they don't, then they're fools, right?
Yeah, but there's.
But I don't think that's quite what he's saying. But yes, we've got a little question about this. Anybody else? What is being contrasted, right? There's a contrast going on, right? Such and such a person can't be such and such a person, or can't have such and such a quality. So, and the way that Rabbi Shapiro does it, he still flips it around, but he says, if you think you have this quality, but really you're such and such a person, believe me, the quality is worthless. You're not really going to have that quality. So first of all, the qualities are supposed to be positive things that we should strive for and that we should value. So we have two qualities here. Yirei chet in the Hebrew is the first phrase, and chasid is the second phrase. Yirei chet means literally fearful of sin.
Sin.
right? The word reverence is a little bit of a softening, right? But because it's about avoiding doing things that are wrong. And it's about being afraid that you might, right? So, that goes back to this idea of heedlessness, just jumping into the fray. Aren't you thinking that maybe you might end up then doing X, Y, Z? You might be a bull in a china shop or something. Do you want to, I don't care. So Yirei Chet is a person who's afraid of doing something wrong. And Hillel says, if you're a boor, just like in the English, and we can think about what that means actually. Is it only about not having information in your head? Is that empty-headed like that, or something else? If you're a boor, you're not going to be able to be fearful of sin. It's not going to register with you. And then the next part is, if you're ignorant, Am Haaretz is an ignorant person. We get into the term Am Haaretz next time. Can't be truly pious. The word chassid, we think of it today as the chassidim, but the term is ancient. They simply appropriated it, for their approach as a term of value, as a term of really important goals. To be a chassid is to be scrupulously pious, really concerned with that kind of approach. Not simply just being able to do the right thing, but to be pious, to find where it's coming off the readings about holiness. A chassid is a person who tries to seek a holy life. And he says, if you're ignorant, you won't be able to do that. So we're going to have to stop now, but let's cogitate a little bit on this stuff, because there's certainly plenty of challenging elements to these statements. Okay, so we'll hopefully be able to meet again. And
Yasher koach.
all tov to everybody.